So anyway, Tina, what's going on in the world of business here in Rockland?
Well, on the subject of some food for thought, we are going to talk about something that happened in Clarkstown last week. The Clarkstown Planning Board green-lighted, gave approval to a very large warehouse, a 220-square-foot warehouse that a New Jersey company called Lincoln Equities will be building in Valley Cottage in Executive Park off Route 303. And I have to say that this was a project that truly and viscerally upset the community. We reported on all three hearings. I saw upwards of 50 or 60 people come out each time. I saw real upset and real anger. For public hearings, it was really palpable how upset people were. Initially, the planning board itself seemed to agree with the public and recognize that to spill more, trucks onto Route 303 was problematic. But the developer of the warehouse, came back and made concessions or made changes that essentially eased its way, and I guess in a sense, I don't know, we could say satisfied the planning board, or we could say that they tied their hands. But here's what's happened. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum in this particular case, and that is that there was another concession that was essentially driven by a citizen, and it was subtle. And I even think that probably most of the people who left that last hearing very, very upset and very disappointed might not have recognized that the needle was moved ever so slightly, probably not enough to really change the feeling that just more truck traffic on 303, Route 303 is a problem. But nevertheless, we're going to talk about what happened there for those, because it's important as it relates to town zoning codes, paying attention, traffic studies, and what citizens are sometimes able to do. So I've set that up. So the main issue, there were many issues on the table here. I mean, when you've got hundreds of trucks coming in and out of a facility each day, you are going to have air pollution, you're going to have noise pollution, and frankly, it just seems as though the planning board, and maybe this is a trend in general, just seems incapable of really putting their minds around the ramifications of those issues, which is unfortunate, because these things do impact our health. But what always gets, very much drilled down on is the issue of traffic. And it is also the bulk of what, came back in terms of public opposition. So the traffic became the centerpiece of this application, and the developers again made a concession about putting in some signaling, some updated signaling to help the flow of traffic at the Lake Road intersection, and to be determined somewhere else. But here's what happened, as I said, on the way to the forum. The developers used a designation to define their warehouse. It's called the ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and there are different definitions of what is a warehouse. And they use the warehouse that is called 150. Now, 150 is a basic warehouse, which would generate far less traffic than some of the other designations, for example, parcel hubs that might be used by a UPS or an Amazon, or distribution centers, okay, where you'd have trucks going in and out all day long. And all through the application process, they would not tell the planning board who their tenant was going to be in this 220,000 square foot distribution warehouse. But to his credit, Valley Cottage resident Rick Tannenbaum was able to point out that their estimates for traffic were based on this basic warehouse and not something larger with more traffic. And in what was kind of there's probably a good sports analogy for this, sort of just a last-minute shift in the fate of how this was going to go, he pointed out to the planning board that that's what this analysis, this traffic analysis, was based on, and that the developer should be confined to this kind of more single-use warehouse rather than a big distribution hub. And to I think several people's surprise, the chairman Gilheim said to the developer, who at that point seemed like they would say yes to anything. They said, "Are you willing to limit it to this designation?" They huddled and said yes. And then what was asked for was something called a map note. And a map note puts this onto the zoning map, and then holds their feet to the fire, limiting their use. This may seem like a small thing, and it also may seem like this is very wonky, but actually this is a very interesting development, because the applications for warehouses are going to likely proliferate throughout this county as we go forward. And the final thing I will say about this is one of the things that the planning board relied on was the recent updating of Clarkstown's comprehensive plan. And the problem with the comprehensive plan, and the problem with comprehensive plans in general, is they are not looking at the subtlety of what is a definition of a warehouse. So if there is a lesson to be taken from all of this for Clarkstown and the towns at large here in the county, or anybody who's listening beyond the county, is that what we once thought of as a warehouse is something much smaller and possibly much more limited in use than what we are going to see now, as we now live in the "I want everything delivered tomorrow" age. So kind of
tomorrow? We want it delivered now. I can't wait more than 30 minutes after I click send at Amazon. What do you mean tomorrow?
I know. We have a joke in this house where when we order something and then like an hour later we say, "Is it here yet?"
Yeah. Is it here yet? Where is it? How come it's not here yet?
That's all fine and dandy.
Exactly. Was that the delivery guy I heard outside? So we do want that, but at the same time, there are a lot of ramifications.
Absolutely.
For this kind of a warehouse, 220,000 square feet. I don't know if you can picture that, but it's really massive. And it's even if they sort of shroud it with their shrubbery, we're still talking about all that comes with it: the beeping noises of trucks backing up, the idling, the air pollution, and of course, all of their reports that they hand in say, "Oh, there's going to be no impact on pollution, no impact on noise." I would say one other thing, which is I have seldom or never seen planning boards require a proper seeker analysis, where it goes deeper than what the developers tend to say, and what the town generally says. Okay, well, we're satisfied with those studies, and that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But since we never see that kind of level of scrutiny for projects like this or many others, at the very least, and more specifically as we're talking about warehouses, there is a way to look at the classification and to apply different standards, at least, as it relates to traffic. And traffic is usually, the obsession of the planning board. So it was an interesting, it was an interesting development. It was a victory to some level. It really should send a message to town planners, especially as I think Orangetown maybe is still in the middle of amending its code, and Ramapo, I don't know if they finished. But I know that towns are really looking at their codes right now, where they have to really think about what the definitions of warehouses and how much traffic the county and certain roads can tolerate. Road 303 is a state road, but it's a two-lane road, and it's nestled in a place that's so close to. The shame about this application was that it's near the Valley Cottage Library, the veterinarian, the two elementary schools, which I don't know whether they were aware of this project or not, but Valley Cottage Elementary and what's the other one? Liberty Elementary, are both very in close proximity to this, especially as air pollution goes. And it's next door to a residential development, in fact, where one of the planning board members lives, Ed Guadero, and he himself, at first had a knee-jerk reaction to this because he lives next door to this, but he gave this speech at the planning board, saying how basically his hands were tied. The zoning code allows it, therefore that's it. So
there does also have to come a point, though, where, and you see this in Stony Point a lot, where residents don't want change. They are very hesitant to build things, but most people will also complain the taxes are too high, the taxes are too high, the taxes are too high. And unless you get a lot of rateables like within high-density housing, who else is going to pay the taxes on such a big piece of property other than a big corporation who builds a big office building or warehouse of some kind to help offset some of those taxes?
Well, it is interesting that they are applying or have applied to the IDA for a massive tax break. But yes, I take your point. I mean, in a case like a warehouse like this, the employment rate is very low. There'll be, 15 employees for a warehouse like this. So that's not a big boon. But yeah, there are taxes. I think one could say that smaller warehouses, they had put together 6 parcels. So that allowed for this very giant warehouse to be built. I mean, it is a balancing act. There's no doubt. We need warehouses if we want our stuff. We also want to breathe, and we also want to not be driven crazy. I mean, one of the problems specifically here is that this warehouse is allowed to operate 24/7. So for people within a certain range, to have to listen to trucks backing up 24/7, think about that. That could drive you mad. It's a tough balancing act, that is true.
Yeah, no doubt. Real quick, we do have a caller on the line, Tina. We do have a caller on the line for you with a question, so we're going to go to that person if you don't mind. So, hi, you're on the air with Tina Traster. Who is this?
It's Gordon, Jeff.
Hey, Gordon, how are you?
Good. Tina, very interesting. You gave a pretty good summary, and you said twice your consternation about planning boards, in this case, Clarkstown's, seeming to want to improve anything. So, Clarkstown has one of the better planning boards. I don't know who's on there now. I remember Rudy Yakazin was chairman for many, many years, and I thought Clarkstown does a pretty good job compared to Ramapo and a lot of other communities. But you would think that the planning boards and zoning board of appeals would consist of people who are experts. Maybe have an engineer, architect, a landscape architect, a firefighter.
Yes, you would think. You would wish.
But most of them are political appointees. I mean, that's how Linda Winnickow got her start in government, became eventually a state senator, and Ryan Carbon and lots of others, where they get on the boards and they serve, and then we use it as a stepping stone to get into higher office, elected office. But mostly they're political appointees. They're people who are active in campaigns, and I'm not speaking for Clarkstown, so I think they're one of the better ones. But the zoning, it's so important in a community to have people on there that really are fair-minded and care about the community and care about everyone. And it's not what's happening. So, and most of us, everyone's busy working and living their lives, and then you have these critical appointees to zoning, not only the planning board but zoning board of appeals, who make decisions and give out variances like they're candy on Halloween, and they shouldn't be. Variances should be given out with a lot of thought and, fairly rarely. So we don't pay much attention to ZBA and planning board. Most residents have no idea what they even do.
You know what? You have made such a good point. And I can't even begin to say what a good point you have just made. The qualifications for these planning board and zoning board members
Is it just residency?
Say that again?
Is it just residency? You have to live within the town you're going to be on the planning board for? Or is it more than that?
There should be a professional vetting and qualification process so that the members sitting on these boards really have, just as Gordon says, the chops that are needed to make decisions that are going to affect all of us living here for the rest of our lives. I mean, the planning boards have an outsized amount of power and responsibility. And I would say that it would not be an understatement to say that there are many a member sitting on these boards who are less than qualified, and who do not have an understanding of the ins and outs of these issues. I would say, touche, Gordon, you are spot on right. But that's not who sits on these boards. And
maybe it'd be a good idea to do a little expose, and let's look at all the boards and see what their backgrounds are, and how many are actually professionals and can bring something to the table when they're discussing these major. Like, this is a big 220,000 square feet. I think you said is over 5 acres of building, and there's a lot of concern here. We're just north of New York City and industrialized parts of New Jersey. We can get all the air pollution, and. But I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have an opinion one way or another because I don't live in that area.
We all have a dog in the fight because we live here.
Yeah, but I don't live close by, so I've been following it. I know Orangetown Coupon has been following. There's several, I guess, large warehouses being considered in Orangetown, and the residents, the Orangetown Coupon and the residents are getting organized and watching it closely. I don't know what their plan is. But, the warehouses are not necessarily clean ratables. They don't employ a lot of people, so you don't get the traffic of employees. But depending on the use, truck traffic can be, pretty heavy.
It's true. That's why this particular victory, though subtle and probably not understood by many, is at least something to look at and maybe to take a little bit of heart in and to use as a springboard to find more definition, about to really take a deeper dive in what we're calling a warehouse these days. So it is. Listen,
you gave a really good synopsis on planning, whether you intended it to or not this morning. It was really good, and maybe we could do one town at a time, and we should have experts and people who care about the community, not because they want to get looking to have an agenda.
I'll put it out there. If anybody wants to, I'm putting this out there. Okay, if anybody wants to create some sort of an educational forum on this, I will be happy to speak. I will be happy to recruit people who really understand these issues, and we can make this sort of it could be a virtual kind of seminar. It can be something that we tease here on the radio. It can be something that we put on public access television. I mean, when you have uninformed citizenry, when planning boards don't understand these things, we end up with all kinds of, we end up being New Jersey. We end up being a place where we're just going to be wall-to-wall development, and it's not going to make sense. So
you're 100% right, and the county planning board, I think, is pretty healthy when it comes to well-rounded people, and they produce really good reports, and they're neutral. They don't, they try to do it just on the circumstances of the application, and they'd be a good resource. I know they must get frustrated. They do thorough, well-considered reports, and then in many cases, the planning board or the zoning board of appeals just ignore their recommendations, which are usually spot on.
Yeah, well, I think the key here is education. I think, this is not sexy. If I got on the horn today and we were talking about some retailer coming to 59, or when we write those stories, that's what everybody wants to talk about. Oh, Chick-fil-A is coming to Route 59. Well, that's something people want to engage in. But when they end up with a 220,000 warehouse in their community, and they say, I don't know how that could have happened, it's simply because we don't pay attention to the fine print. People don't pay attention to the process.
On the other hand, but then people get all worked up. Nobody wants things in their own backyard. But as you pointed out, we all want these things delivered to our front doors, quickly and conveniently.
Well, the point is to figure out, what we can tolerate in advance, rather than having these applications come at us, and then not having any sort of there's nothing in place to prevent it. I mean, it's about, I guess really it's about planning. I think in particular, what towns didn't anticipate was the morphing and the evolution of warehouses themselves. And so they demand more definition, more classification. So in a sense, we have something here that's not esoteric; it's specific.
And when you do get that finally up and running, Tina, if you get involved with a presentation or something going on, please let us know, and we'll have you on again to talk about it, even outside your own segment here on Mondays, as you always do at 9:15. We thank you very much for joining us. Gordon, of course, thank you as always for chiming in as well.
Hey, Tina, call into our show on Fridays after 9 o'clock dinner.
Okay, or if you want to continue this conversation, reach out to me by email.
Okay, I think it's a good topic. You really opened up a lot of people's eyes, I think.
Excellent. Thank you both for joining us. And Tina, we will be off next Monday, so we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks, if not during the week at some random time.
You can also call whenever you want,
Yeah, sure. Call during open line, sure.
Okay.
But we're off on the 4th of July.
Yes.
All right, happy 4th.
Thank you. Same to you. Have a good one.